Hey, what is up guys, my name is TheXclusiveAce. Today we're comparing the M4 against the M13. With all the weapon nerfs in the recent update, I thought it would be interesting to see how these OG weapons stack up against each other now. In this video, you will see a comparison with stats, best attachments, recoil patterns and more. If this is your first time here, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button as I make tips and tricks in Warzone and much more. Let's look at the weapon stats here. The M4 has an ADS speed of 233 milliseconds. And the M13 comes in at 238 milliseconds. Movement speed of the M4 is 4.7 meters per second and the M13 clocks in at 4.67 meters per second. So when looking at the reload speed, the M4 reloads in 2.23 seconds and the M13 reloads in 2.37 seconds. The rate of fire for the M4 is 809 rounds per minute and the M13 comes in at 891 rounds per minute. So as we can see so far, they are pretty similar, but let's see what the damage profile look like. The M4 does 42 damage to the head, which means it's going to take 6 shots to down a fully plated enemy. The M13 does 36 damage to the head, which means it's going to take 7 shots to down a fully plated enemy. Note that this is the damage for the first base damage fall off, and the M13 offers up more range. Looking at the second damage drop off, we can see that the M4 offers up more damage than the M13. Looking at the damage for the chest, stomach and extremities, we can see that the M4 offers slightly more damage than the M13. With the second damage drop off, it is pretty much the same. The M4 puts out more damage than the M13. Let's take a look at the new TTK for these weapons. The M4 comes in at 371 milliseconds to the head, and the M13 comes in at 404 milliseconds. For the chest, the M4 comes in at 667 milliseconds, and the M13 comes in at 673 milliseconds. Note that this is the TTK for the first damage drop-off, but since we're using these at long range, let's also take a look at the long range TTK. The M4 then comes in at 519 milliseconds to the head, and the M13 comes in at 539 milliseconds. For the chest, the M4 comes in at 742 milliseconds, and the M13 comes in at 808 milliseconds. Let's also take a look at the TTK if you mix in one headshot, as it is unlikely that you will consistently get more than that on a regular basis. The M4 then comes in at 593 milliseconds, and the M13 comes in at 606 milliseconds. For the second damage drop off, you need at least 2 headshots to get a TTK of 667 milliseconds, and the M13 you need at least 2 headshots to get a TTK of 741 milliseconds. So let's check out the recoil pattern. We have the M4 to the left and the M13 to the right. So while looking at the recoil pattern, both weapons are very manageable to control. The M4 has a decent vertical recoil before it goes off to the right in a sharp curve. The M13 has very little straight vertical recoil before going off to the right as well. With the M13 you need to be pulling down and to the left on your mouse and stick. Now let's look at the attachments, and I'm going to show you what the differences are after the weapons are fully kitted out. For the M4, we take the monolithic suppressor, grenadier barrel, VLK3X optic, commando foregrip and 60 round mag. For the M13, we take the same attachments as the M4. This gives us a great long range build for both weapons. So let's see what weapon changes this actually gives us compared to a stock weapon. For the range, the M4 gains 54% range and the M13 gains 47%. The ADS speed will always increase as we increase the bullet velocity and range, so here the M4 goes up to 452 milliseconds and the M13 goes up to 361 milliseconds. For the movement speed, the M4 goes up to 4.27 meters per second and the M13 goes up to 4.28 meters per second. For the ADS movement speed, the M4 goes up to 1.83 meters per second and the M13 goes to 1.85 meters per second. For the bullet velocity, the M4 ends up at 1266 meters per second and the M13 ends up at 1258 meters per second. Let's jump into my final thoughts on these weapons. With all the nerfs to the weapons in Warzone, there is now a much more open meta than before. Right now, I think the M4 is kinda back, as it now can compete with the other weapons. If you were to choose between these two weapons right now, the M4 is probably the better one out of these two. The M13 is easier to use with that higher fire rate and a bit easier to control at range, but the M4 hits harder and has a better TTK. For me, the M4 has always been special, as it just is a legendary weapon in several games. I highly recommend that you dust off your old M4, because now it's time to try it out again. Let me know in the comments which one of these you prefer. That is it for this video guys, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't, and as always I will see you legends in the next one.